Welcome to the Sistas Talk podcast. I'm your host, Danielle, and today we have a special fill-in co-host, Miranda Hines. Our special guest is Miss Arthur Genesis Kemp. And so today we're going to be talking about a very serious topic. Very, very serious. And I love that Genesis herself came up with this topic, by the way, guys. Rising above limitations and breaking barriers. I'm gonna pause on that. Let that marinate. We've been going through a lot. Okay. We've been going through collectively as human beings for the last 2 years. It feels like we've been going through a great deal of a turn of events. Different global events have been happening, and it's undeniable. Some of the issues that we've talked about, they've now surfaced for the entire public to see. And so I really admire the fact that people like Genesis, people like Miranda, people like myself, also the co-host Aisya Carroll, are brave enough to speak up about these issues that so many people have talked about and no one heard their voices. And that's one reason why on the Sistas Talk podcast, one of my slogans is that we want your voice to be heard. These are real issues, real people having real conversations about topics that matter. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the torch over to Genesis. Let them know who you are and where you're from.
First and foremost, Danny, thank you on behalf of Sistas Talk for having me on your platform. And thank your co-host, Aisya, as well as Miranda, for stepping in today. So, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who are tuning in, I am the author of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace, a diversity and inclusion enthusiast, and let alone a motivational speaker. And just recently, there has been a lot that has been going on in my personal as well as professional life, but I just want to give hope, wisdom, encouragement, knowledge, and insight to other people who may be going through various trials and tribulations that, the season that you're in right now is temporary and it is going to pass, but you just need to recalibrate your mindset and shift your perspective to get out of that rut. But I want to let each one of you know that, I'm standing right there with you, whether I know you personally or if I just know you by Facebook connections or whatever, but you're not in this alone.
Love it, love it. And also, I can't go without allowing Miss Miranda Hines to let you guys know who she is, where she's from, and hey, let them know how they can reach out to you.
Hi guys, I am Miranda Hines. I am a longtime friend of Danielle. I'm actually a nurse, so this is new for me, but I am grateful to be here. I really appreciate my friend Danielle for inviting me. I am really excited about the topic because as a young African-American female being in the ER, I have the same pretty much situations. I read Danielle's book and I could relate to a lot of things that she pointed out, and I'm an avid reader, so I'm excited to read your book, Genesis. I still am a paper holder, so I will be buying your book, and I'm just excited about the topic.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do on the front lines, because I know it is not easy, especially with some of the people in my life who are in the medical profession.
Yeah,
definitely. And you have to be brave, right? I mean, there's a lot happening and you guys are seeing patients with all types of illnesses and situations. So definitely thank you for serving our country, which you failed to mention, as well as being a nurse. And yes, we are longtime friends. I just love me some Miranda. So let's talk a little bit about this topic, rising above. It's a two-part series to this topic, rising above limitations. Now, for a lot of people, a lot of people may think that, hey, what limitations are you talking about? Each limitation applies equally to every person. Now, would you ladies agree to that concept? Do you believe that everyone in this country has similar limitations?
Of course.
No.
All right. Okay. So Miranda, tell me why you think that's not true.
Well, for starters, let's just be honest. As a woman in America, we are seen as the lesser. We do not have equality in pay. We don't have equality in standards. We don't get equality in respect. Just like in your book, you having to speak up yourself is something when someone in the same position with you with the same level of education, just because he's a man, he is automatically given respect, and you have to demand respect. And that's just being one level of it. Honestly, there's not equality in gender, race. No, just no.
Okay. And then Genesis, obviously you've written a book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. Do you believe we share the same struggles equally in this country? Regardless of sex or race or anything, you can talk about it all.
I do not. Race, we don't share the same equality. When it comes to religion, we don't share the same equality, because there's so much difference with religion. Even though, we all believe that there is a higher being, each religion has their own practices, and, that begins to divide us. Then, to Miranda's point, whenever we talk about pay, women, there was just an article that was put out recently that just highlighted the significance that men are still being higher paid than women. So there is that pay gap, even though women are now doing the same work as a man. But why is it now just hitting the forefront? Did it have to take the Me Too movement in order for you all to realize that women can do the same thing and we can have a seat at the table? Then you talk about this whole racial turmoil where there's races that are battling against one another. There's no equality there, but whenever you go beyond the superficial level, you see at the end of the day, we all have the same genetic makeup. We all bleed red if we get cut. We all have the same organs. So you have to ask yourself, why the heck are we, in this racial war? Then whenever you talk about political things, there's no equality whenever there's political, even though you may be Democrat, Republican, or whatever, we all want the same thing, but there's a way that we go about what we want to get and achieve. So whenever I look at the full scale, whether it's race, religion, education, the education system has no equality, because if you look at a school that is in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and then you compare that school to one in a predominantly white neighborhood, the books are going to be different. The white neighborhood is going to have better books, more technology, and etc. Well, are the black and brown children not as important as the white children? Are they both not in the public school system? So why is there a difference in the quality of education that one racial group is receiving over another? And I feel like it is a gruesome way for systemic racism and systemic oppression to keep Black and brown children down, because if we're not feeding them, with wisdom, knowledge, and insight, whether it's public education, whether it's, going a little bit further into like charter schools or whatever the case may be, then how are we setting up our Black and brown children or minority children as a whole for success?
That's right. And now what I've seen collectively for predominantly Black and brown areas, those school systems lack equity. And that is a topic that Aisya Carroll is well versed on. She's the person that you want to reach out to. So for people who are watching this live today, if you're looking for an advocate, for someone who wants to see gainful equity in these type of communities, Black and brown communities, reach out to Aisya Carroll at survivornotbychance.com. This is a serious and a real issue. And this definitely caters towards that element of this topic, rising above limitations. So we've kind of pointed out one limitation, and that's not the equal share or spreading of knowledge, of information. So what are some ways that we can bridge that gap? We talked about even gender wage gaps a moment ago. What can we do to rise above those limitations, Genesis?
One thing I would say is educate those who don't necessarily look like us. Share our viewpoints. Be willing to have open, honest, transparent conversation with other people. We could look for ways to, build partnerships, get allies in our corner, and just really look for ways to push the needle forward. But we can't be afraid to just hide behind our mask or not be, or be afraid to not speak up, because I feel like a lot of times we as women and as African American women, society has beaten us down to the point where sometimes we don't want to open our mouth because they're going to label us as the angry Black woman, or we're going to be seen as aggressive, or there's so many other microaggression and labels that are tied to us if we speak up. But why is it okay if Becky, Karen, Susie, or whoever speaks up, and then we have the same idea, but we're not voicing that idea? And then it also brings me back to the point where it's like closed mouths don't get fed. We can't complain about something if we're not willing to stand up and speak out. Whether if we're doing it, Danny, Miranda, Aisya, or whatever, we are a sisterhood, and we need to help one another instead of trying to be in competition with each other. So we have to complement one another. Another thing that I encourage some of my friends, like I have friends in the Asian community, friends in the white community, whenever they say something that I don't agree with, I pretty much say, I don't agree with what you said, and this is the reason why I don't agree with it. And it kind of opens Pandora's box a little bit, so we can have that dialogue and kind of talk about it. Because sometimes we have friends who are not in the same race, and we want to shoot the breeze with our friends, but we have to have certain boundaries and let them know, okay, it's cool if you say this around me, but I don't want you to go and say this around someone else who you don't have this relationship with, because then people are going to start looking at you side eye and be like, oh, she's a racist, she's a bigot.
And then the question is it really okay with you though? You know what I mean? Like you really have to dig a little bit deeper than that too, because the fact is, I like the fact that you said we have to set those boundaries, and we have to set that even with our friends. We can't, because if they feel comfortable enough with us to say things that are slightly derogatory, slightly discriminatory, whatever you want to call it, then we're opening up Pandora's box for that to happen to anyone. You know what I mean? And also, I do love the fact that you said to create allies. That's so key. That's so essential to rising above those limitations. Because one business and corporation that comes to mind is Dallas Professional Women. So I definitely have to give this shout out to them. I just became the ambassador of diversity and inclusion for DPW, and I'm so ecstatic because I am super passionate about equality, about real diversity. You see a lot of companies and their policies. Genesis, I know you can attest, Miranda as well. They always talk about the Equal Fair Act. They always talk about the EEOC and all these types of things, and they hire a number of us. But then when we get there, they don't really show that they're upholding those policies, do they? The coworkers don't really show you that equal and mutual respect. Your paycheck doesn't reflect that we're honoring EEOC, we're honoring Black people to be equal. And so I think it's so important that not only do we nip it in the bud with our friends, but we also make that necessary boundary, set that boundary with them of respect. When you say things that can emotionally drain me or make me feel upset or sad, you're literally showing me that you don't respect me and who I really am. So I think that it's important that we start addressing those issues right away, immediately, and head on. I think that's the only way. Also, again, I love the fact that you said educating people that don't look like us. That's essential, because if they don't know who we are, what our culture is about, to understand the real true diversity behind our culture, because you'd be amazed how different the three of us are right here on this show. We have various backgrounds, and I mean, it's so funny how they just try to lump us all in one little category. Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
And I do like that point, like, not just making it like a joke and setting those boundaries, but just really getting to the root cause. So I like that tip. So whenever I have another discussion with my friends, I'm really going to dig deep and really look at that, because that was a good point that you brought out, because I didn't see it from that viewpoint.
Yeah. No, I've always been labeled as the aggressive type of woman, and I stand by it strong and true, but I think it's important though that we start leaning more towards the transparency and the honesty and making people feel uncomfortable to promote that growth. I really do feel that just through evolution, right? You know, humans have evolved to this point through challenges, right? Through great disasters in the world, things like that. So in order for us to really end racism, I really believe it's going to take us to come forward, be honest, brutally honest, regardless of whose feelings it hurts. Just understand that our feelings have been hurt for over 500 years, you know, and that's how I really look at that. So I want to ask you this. What type of limitations, Genesis and Miranda, have you guys faced, and how have you overcame them?
You want to go first, Miranda? I'll let you go first. No.
Well, for myself, I come from a predominantly black and brown neighborhood. My mother and my father both high school graduates, didn't go any further. Worker bees, you know, they do everything they can to support us. And it was always my dream and my goal to be bigger than that. I do not see anything wrong with working to survive, beside what are you setting for the next generation? So if we're only working to survive, what are we showing our children? So for me, overcoming looked like a college degree, you know, showing my children that they can be bigger than just a 9 to 5. And then once I went to, as Danielle mentioned, I went to the military. It was something that I wanted to do for my legacy. So I went to the military, and thanks to my mother and my stepfather, the way they raised me, I excelled because I took initiative. I knew what hard work looked like. I knew how to lead because I had been taught to be a leader in my household. So being a young African-American woman at 17, I got pushed back from everybody. When you go into the military, you have different races, different ranks of people, and being a young African-American woman at 19, being an NCO, that's a non-commissioned officer, I was in charge of soldiers, and they were older, some were younger, different, you know, men and women, and having to tell them what to do. Oh my God, you guys, when I was in Iraq, the hardest thing for me is having a child at home and having to tell grown men how to carry themselves. My God. So I mean, I can go like overcoming, you know, helping my parents with my children, and then in the opposite, having to help grown men. That for me, you guys, has been the biggest obstacle I've had to overcome. Being in management, you know, having to help people with how they budget their funds, or how they take care of their families, you know, because in the military you have to do family care plans and things like that. Writing accommodations or writing reprimands, like it was a lot. And I'm grateful for that experience, but you don't see it until you look back. And in hindsight, it's like, wow, like, did I really do that? Like, and then you think about all that you had to endure, because it's not many. I have one NCO that I can give so much respect to. We called him Mean Green, and I don't think he knows how he impacted a lot of people. But being able to go to him and be honest with him about what I was facing, being a young woman dealing with men, not blatantly in my face, I'm not going to do that. And having to find the strength in myself to be not afraid, because I was for so long afraid to be in the military and labeled as the aggressor. That's the one, you know, Oh, she's so aggressive. Oh, she's so angry all the time. Oh, why does she always have to raise her voice? Now, mind you, this is the military, and we should be assertive and aggressive. But because I was a young Black woman, those things become a negative connotation. They're no longer seen as positive. If my counterpart was aggressive or assertive, he looks like everything the military wants him to be. We have produced this soldier who can go out and break all the barriers, but because you're a young Black female, you get the negative, everything that comes with it. And just, I'm proud to say that, I was able to progress and break all the limitations that they had on me as a young Black woman. I walked away from promotions and, what they wanted for me, but I didn't want to continue in that. So that was it for me.
Love it. Love it. Genesis. Woo.
Oh wow, that story's
That was awesome, Miranda.
yeah, yes, but let's give her 2 snaps because that
yes,
was
seriously.
that was
girl.
I was like, oh my gosh, I could relate, even though I was not in the military, but it's just
Look, yes, we were. Corporate America is military. It's a different type.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess a little bit about my background. I'm first generation American. So my dad was from Curaçao, so off the tip of Venezuela, part of the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. My mom is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the West Indies. And just seeing how hard my parents had to work when they came to America, even though they had degrees in their country. My dad is Dutch influenced, my mom is British influenced, but it's like coming here, they had to start all the way over. So the sacrifices that I saw my parents made in order for myself and my siblings to have a better life, it was like, man, like you could see them be selfless because they had to, put a hold on some of their dreams and aspirations in order for us to get where we want it to be. And I have 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters, but we're a blended family. So my older brother went to college, but he went to technical school at first. And then I was like, well, you know what? I really didn't want to go to school, to be honest. I wanted to go to acting school, which my dad was always very supportive, and he was like, okay, if you want to do that and that's something you're passionate about, I'm going to let you try it. So I had went to the Neil Hamill agency here in Houston, Texas. I had auditioned for IMTA LA, which is the International Model and Talent Agency. Got selected. When I got home, I was so excited. I told my parents, and my dad's like, we don't have $5,000. If they want you that bad, they will pay for you to go. And I was like, okay, so typical Caribbean parents, here we go. And my mom was like, you need to go to school, like real school, because as long as you're living in this house, you're either going to work or go to school. We don't raise any lazy children. So then I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let me really take this seriously. So I didn't want to stay anywhere, close to home. I wanted to flee the game. And so I went to UT Austin for a summer semester, and I would never forget this. My mom sent my older brother there instead of her and my dad coming for Parents' Day. And I'm like, you know how embarrassed it is for your older brother to be walking around the college campus following you? Your friends are over here like, hey, we're going to go to the sorority party, or hey, you want to go check out these frat boys or something? And I'm like, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. My brother's over there.
Brother is not having that.
Yes. So fast forwarding, I ended up coming home, went to community college, got an associate's degree, which was good because it's the same basics you would take. Yeah. Then I ended up getting my degree from U of H. But when I started going to U of H, I was a psychology major, y'all, because I was like, I like these classes. They're fun. They're easy.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no.
Easy.
And
that's the truth.
Yes. When I started working for this Fortune 500 oil and gas company, like they really brought me to my knees, like real quick. And they're like, my first boss, he was a male boss, and I was working for drilling and new technology. So he's like, what do you plan on doing with a psychology degree at X company here? And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. But I was like, my whole point at this point was to go to med school, like, you know, what my parents eventually grained in me. And he's like, no, you're not going to go far with a psychology degree. And I was like, you know what? In my head, I'm like, devil is a lie. You're not God. Like, I got this. And so then I was like, okay, let me pump my brakes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And I was like, okay. So I started listening and whatnot. And then he pretty much told me, well, if you switch your degree to something else, the company will pay for it. So I ended up switching my degree from psychology to supply chain and logistics in technology, with double minors in purchasing and organizational leadership and supervision. While I was an administrative assistant, so I had to start at the bottom of this Fortune 500 company, even though I already had 4.5 years of experience working for a corrosion company, where I had to work my way up from an imaging clerk to project coordination to HSE assistant. Then I became an HSE interim manager. And for those of you who don't know what HSE is, it's health, safety, and environmental. But then going over to this Fortune 500 company, they see me as a threat because, one, I'm a young African-American woman. They're already asking me, how do you know about our assets in EG, which is Equatorial Guinea, which is in Africa? And I was like, because I was the young girl on the other side writing your top side level 1 inspection reports. And I was like, okay, God, I see how you're kind of bringing this around 3 circle. So while I was in this particular role as an admin, I was like, even though they see me as an admin, I see myself more than an admin. So that was the first limitation that I had. And how I overcame by breaking that limitation was getting my 4-year degree from the University of Houston, because not only did I have the experience, but I wanted the paper to complement the experience that I had. And since this company talked about, you know, oh, we need an ROI and stuff, which is return on investment, I'm like, okay, you're going to get your return on investment, but I'm going to get mine too. And I'm going to get my degree paid for by you, but I'm also going to work my way up. So once I got my degree, I was like, okay, I want a different role. And, you know, I started networking internally and externally throughout the company to see what other positions were there. But then people were starting to see me as aggressive. And I had to tell people, if you want to be an admin, that's fine. If you love it, that's fine. But my goal is not to work at a Fortune 500, to be an administrative assistant for 5, 10, 15, whatever years. 4.5 years, that was my stop. Like, I'm ready to get on with it. I'm trying to secure the bags.
Right. I know that's right.
Yeah.
But seriously, you know, that's a good point you just made. I have noticed that whenever any corporation that I end up working for, when I see someone that looks like me, they're working at the front desk. That's it. I was the only one that was going behind the scan double doors. I was like, what's going on here? Yeah. So that's a good point you just made.
But I want to encourage those people, because it's so sad, because like whenever I saw some of the other people that look like us, I'm like, you have like not only a bachelor's degree, but at this point you have a master's degree. I only have a bachelor's degree. Why are you sitting down here as an administrative assistant? Don't you want more for yourself? Is this all you're cut out to be? And then and I just want to get in the mindset of those individuals, because I feel like so many times they listen to what the white man or white woman says, that they feel like it's conditioning them to be stagnant, that they only can do that. No, you only can't do that. You are created for more than where you are, but you have to see yourself than where you are. You have to look ahead and say, you know what, I'm doing this for me, but I'm also doing it for, you know, my family and future generations to come. Because you need to break those barriers by breaking strongholds, by breaking mindsets, by breaking old methodology and thinking. Because we didn't get here by, you know, not advocating. We got here because our ancestors, some of them lost their lives so we could be free, so we could vote, so we could go to school, and etc. So don't let that be a waste. So I could,
no, that's good. That's what. Look, that's why I created Sistas Talk podcast. That's all right. Take a breather. Take a sip of water. We're here for it.
Genesis, I have a question for you. So, do you believe, because you and I and Danny, we all share something in common? We saw a vision for ourselves that was greater than what everybody else around us.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the people that you and Danny both experienced that are sitting at the front desk, do you feel like it's something that is in us that limits our vision? Or do you feel like you're just the type of person that's a go-getter?
I feel like, oh, go ahead. You want to?
No, go ahead first.
Oh. I was going to say, I definitely think that whatever you achieve in life or push to achieve in life is basically how you view yourself. I do honestly feel that how you view yourself is how you'll output, right? So if you envision, and then also it has everything to do with confidence. You know, if you were raised in a family who didn't really talk to you much about your future or didn't show you how great you are or speak life over you, I think that it becomes easier for you to think less than of yourself, right? I think it becomes easier for you to get boxed into this way of thinking and this way of life. So you kind of conform to this everyday routine versus you thinking outside of the box. When you have someone that's pouring into you, it doesn't have to be your parents. It could be your new relationship. Your new boo is pouring into you every day. Honey, you're so beautiful. Good morning. I made your hot tea. Let's get ready. Let's make this money. You know, you said you wanted more for yourself. I saw a new job opportunity for you. When you just have good people around you, good energy, I think that boosts you and your own self-confidence internally and also subconsciously for you to do more. But when you don't have that, when it's just you, or you have a lot of negative interactions between yourself and your friends, you have a lot of friends and family who don't think the best of you, who don't see your greatness. They're not trying to see it because they don't see it in themselves. Then I think that's when we become stagnant and we start accepting less than what we should accept. And one more point I want to touch on what Genesis said earlier, that a lot of people have died in the past for our success, so that we could vote, so that Black women could work in the same spaces as white men and women. It's important that we put 20 toes down, 10 fingers up, you know, to do whatever it is that we need to do. 20, that's funny. But anyway, we do what we need to do.
Okay.
So that we can be the best that we can be. And also keep in mind, a lot of those people who came over to this country from different countries, it was not just from Africa, it was from South America, it was from the Caribbean island, it was from Africa too. But those Black and brown people who came to this country for a better way of life, a lot of those people were already great. A lot of them were astronomers. A lot of those people were nurses, doctors, you know, researchers. So I want people to stop thinking. That's something I learned from Arthur Frank Jordan. He came on the show a couple of times for our King's Edition. These are things, this is parts of our history that we don't know about. And I think the more that we research and the more that we find out about ourselves and our ancestors, the greater we will become by default.
Yeah. And then to just compliment what you said, Danny, I definitely, and your question, Miranda, I definitely do believe that it can be due to mindset and who you surround yourself with. But then it also could be, you know, internally, you may have some internal strongholds and bondage that you need to break. And the reason why I answered it the way I did was because younger, if you would have asked me this question like maybe 10 years ago when I was a victim of bullying and I was in a dark season, then I really didn't know who I was. But I had, you know, my parents who were strong Christian influencers who told me, "You're great. God loves you. You're not broken. You're not alone." And they spoke life into me, into my dark season, because for a small bit of time, you know, I allowed what other people said about me to play havoc in my mind. And as I was allowing those things to play havoc in my mind, I was seeing myself through somebody else's lens instead of seeing me through my own lens and seeing me as the queen that I am, as a child of God that I am, as the wife that I'm going to be someday, and etc. And once I gained that confidence in myself, then I started to project and I started to vision myself where I wanted to go. And there was no one in hell who could tell me what I couldn't do, because I had already been through that dark season. When you are a victim of bullying, when you go through depression and you go down to that low, sometimes it's in that low part and that pit where God speaks to you the most, and he birthed something in and through you. And you have to know that, you know, you go through that pruning process, but you also have to go through that process where you say, like Mary, take the shackles off my feet so I can dance.
Yeah.
And you gotta get your boxing gloves on, and you gotta war for yourself when no one can war for you. And sometimes, even though I am now a married woman, and sometimes my husband, he doesn't always see the things that I see, but I said, that's okay, boo. God is going to give you a download, but I'm going to keep doing me, because I know the vision that I have, and I know the places that I want to go, and I know what my Heavenly Father has spoken in and through me. So whenever I talk about people, when I see people just sitting there being stagnant and not wanting to do more, I just want to ask them a question. Are you living, or are you existing? And you have to kind of get to the RCA, the root cause analysis of where they are currently, because whether it is truly a mindset or whether they have negative influences around them that is causing them to see themselves less than. So I always try to tell people, I want to get to the root, because I've been there, baby boy. I've been there, baby girl. And I'm only 29 years old, but had it not been for that dark season, that depression, that bullying, where would I be?
And there it is. Through some type of challenge, right? Or some oppressive force, you evolve. You see? This is how we become to being our greater selves, our greater version of who we are. And I love it. We have exacerbated this topic, rising above limitations, because we've shown you, each one of us, all three of us have shown you a little bit of some of our challenges and how we've overcome them. I mean, if it means you just going from pen to paper with your history, maybe some of your experiences. I don't know. You mentioned Genesis depression. There's a lot of people that are actively right now going through a depressive season. PTSD is real. And I don't think that people really understand how these stresses that we're talking about, even whether it's in the military, I'm sure, versus corporate America, and how we make light and playfully say, hey, corporate America is a form of a militant environment as well, because it brings about a certain force of stress that can create a multitude of issues if you don't handle yourself first. You first have to come to reality, look yourself in the mirror and find out who you are and what are your struggles. And we're not saying to tell the world what they are, but we're telling you to be transparent enough with yourself so that you can start dealing with those issues and you can start evolving into the person that God has created you to be. So I love this. Now let's talk about, we handled the first part of this topic. So let's talk a little bit about breaking those barriers. What to you ladies, gosh, when you really think about it, Black and brown people have broken a lot of barriers. A lot. Yep. A lot. I don't care who you are that's watching the stream, you can attest. I mean, we can go down the list of barrier breaking. I mean, look at the late DMX. He was a Black man who had struggled his entire life. At the age of 14, he was tricked into doing drugs, right? He smoked a marijuana blunt that was laced with crack, I believe, or cocaine or something like that, something to that effect. But it got him hooked on this drug, for the rest of his life. And this man, God rest his soul, passed away at age 50, but he will go down in history for the most profound rapper. He's going to stand on the sides of Tupac and all the other great rapping legends. And this man didn't just rap about nonsense. He rapped about his life. He was a God-fearing man. He told you straight up the demons that he was facing every single day and what he was battling. And I watched an interview a few nights ago of him on the Talib Kweli. If you don't know who he is, you're not listening to it. He has his own podcast now, and he interviewed DMX. And to watch a grown Black man break down and cry on this show because he's reliving his past and how somebody, he said on the show, how could somebody do that to a child? So I want to stand on that point and say, now DMX situation is different because somebody laced up his drugs with something that was profoundly life-changing for him in a negative way, but he used that negative impact and made something greater. He became a legend from it. Now, what I want to say to the parents that have children today, make sure that you're speaking life into your kids. Make sure that you're boosting their confidence every day, because there could be people that are bullying your children and your children are just too embarrassed to come talk to you about it. Or maybe you haven't made their relationship with your children safe enough where they feel comfortable enough to talk to you. Maybe you're the bully to your child. These are deeper issues and deeper concepts for another time, a different segment. But I do need to say that on this segment that is so real that we need to really understand and be self-aware when we're raising our children that this world is harsh and these people don't care about our children. But if we say that we care and love our children, we have to make sure that they're prepared for everything. I wasn't prepared for corporate America, right? Not because I didn't have the education. I have tons of education, but I'm talking about from an emotional standpoint. I had no idea people could be so rude. I had no idea that real racism was so deeply rooted, in this country. And going through corporate America system, I was able to identify that. I was able to become stronger as a result, but it was a nightmare going through that. And so how do you break that cycle? You break it by informing your children, educating your children, and teaching them how to overcome these limitations that the world itself is constantly trying to impede on our children.
Yeah, I completely agree because corporate America is a beast, and you definitely have to be mentally, emotionally prepared for it, because if not, it will stress you out beyond measures. And it's not easy, and some people, they see you working this glamorous job in corporate America, but they don't see the trials and the tribulations that you face to get to where you are. And sometimes they see you as, oh, okay, well, what did you do to get to where you are? I didn't do anything. I held true to my morals, my values, and my integrity, and I got here by my academia, and I got here on my work ethics. Not that I did something strange for a piece of change, or I gave some head to get ahead. No, I got here on my own, and it's so shocking that sometimes we as women in corporate America or in any industry, we have to always, be one step ahead of the game, which can be mentally exhausting, because if I wanted to play a game, I could go on the playground and play with my nieces and nephew.
Yes.
But
yes.
I'm here to do a job, and I want to do my job right, and I don't want you all to look at me any kind of way because you feel like, oh, okay, maybe if you dress this way, then maybe you'll get this position, or if you change your hair, you'll get this, or whatever the case may be, because they want you to always conform and bend who you are to fit into a box, when in reality, I was never meant to be in a box. I wasn't born in a box, and I'm still living. Whenever I die, that's when I'll go into a box if I choose. But just because I'm here, don't try to place me in a box. Just like how you kind of, you're already checking the box by hiring me to show your shareholders you're inclusive, you're diverse, and you're equitable.
Right.
But don't expect me to stay in this box. If you really want to be about diversity, equity, and inclusion, then show your people how you are promoting these people who are in the minority bucket. And don't create these ERG groups, these employee resources group, to say, oh, this is what we're doing for our people, or etc. No, let it speak by, are you paying them well? Are you promoting them? Are you giving them opportunities that you are giving someone else that does not look like them? Are you allowing them to not only be seen, but are you hearing them? There are so many different layers that go into corporate America that it's unbelievable, because people on the outside looking in, they're like, oh, you work for that company? Are they hiring? Oh, I want to work there. But then you also don't want to dam the bridge that you came from, because this is the hand that feeds you temporarily. And it is a good company, but there's people inside the company that make it not enjoyable to want to work there. And there are things that in the company that need to be addressed in order for the company to truly thrive.
Yes. Well said. Well said. I 100% concur. I mean, we're living in times where people are starting to speak out more because they're starting to realize their worth. They're understanding that, what, this job may not be for me for too much longer. I'm going to do what I need to do for now until I can get where I need to be. That's the best way I can put it, and I'm glad that people are starting to identify with their true greatness, because that's so important. These jobs can kill you. I don't think people are aware of that. I know so many older people over the age of 65 who worked all their lives, and now they're dealing with diabetes, strokes, cancers. I mean, the list just goes on, and you got to think about your environmental stresses. We don't do that enough. We think a lot of this stuff is hereditary, and none of this stuff has been seen in your family DNA until now. And that's because of the constant pressure. Like Genesis said, you're trying to conform to this society who will never truly respect you until you set that boundary to make them respect you. That's really what it boils down to. So as Miranda touched on earlier, that mindset, I'm telling you, the mindset will get you every time. If you feel like you're not worth a high paying job, or you're not worth opening up your own business and taking a risk on yourself, you take a risk every day when you get in a car and go to that job. So why aren't you betting or taking a risk on yourself? You should be your most expensive investment because you're worth it. And we need to have these type of conversations more often. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking like, you know what? We need to do a business shower for people who are afraid to open up their own business, or they don't know which way to go and they need resources. We need to have an event where we invite you for a small fee and we offer the information that's needed to start your brand new business from the ground up. And instead of donating, you can donate physical items and products, but also you can give a charitable donation. So that way that person has some physical money, right? The equity to start their business, So these are the type of things that we need to, and I put that in the universe for a reason, because I hope other businesses will hear what I said and they'll start implementing the same idea. We have baby showers all day long. We need to have business showers. People need startup, fees. That it costs money to start a business. So you have to start somewhere. So I love everything that we talked about on the show today. And Genesis, you brought it. Miranda, you need to just go ahead and just be a regular on the Sistas Talk podcast and stop playing, okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Every Sunday at 3. But Genesis, I want you to tell people where they can find your book and where they can find you if they want you to come out for public speaking.
So my book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, is available on Amazon for $13. You can find it at Book Mecca, a Black-owned bookstore, Shelves Bookstore. You can find it at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and some of the other brick and mortar stores. The good thing is I recently released a second edition of my book after the passing of my father to highlight all the things that happened in 2020 personally as well as professionally. So make sure you grab the second edition of the book so you could have all the conclusive information. If you're interested in hearing more from me, I am on Facebook at Genesis, that's Genesis, like the Bible, Amaris, Amaris, last name Kemp, Kemp. You can find me on Instagram. If you want to email me, reach me at genesisamarisKemp@gmail.com. And I just want to hear from you. I want to hear what's going on in your life. Like, what can I help you with? How can we build a community? How can we break bread together?
Definitely. And you know what? Let's read some of these comments because we were just over here talking. We're sorry, guys. So we have Kathy who says, "Yep, Queen, with the purpose is on the task approving all business structures. Sister Danny can get book done, documentaries, photo. Oh yeah, I can do it all. Guys, I never tell people what all I do, but yes, I can. Call me up. Just go to sisterscwt@gmail.com. Send me an email. I will hook you up. And let's see here. I had Miss Latrice Gardner. She was just following the dialogue, saying real talk. That's the truth, Another real talk. Okay. We have Talk Truth series. It says, hello, ladies. We have Mike Ryder who says, that's my girl, Genesis. All right. We have an Arthur somewhere in here. Here we go. Arthur Shonda says, hi, Genesis.
Hey, girl.
Miranda, I think that's your sis.
That's my sister.
Hey, Virgo.
Yes. So as always, man, we want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening to our powerful topic today. I mean, it really was a powerful topic. Rising above limitations and breaking barriers with special guest Arthur Genesis Kemp. So guys, make sure you purchase her book. Make sure you reach out to her if you want her on your show. Also, on this Friday, we're going to have the Sistas Talk Kings edition. We brought it down to just one time per month because, as you guys know, I am busy. So is my co-host, Aisya Carroll. But we're going to have a special guest by the name of Camp Cleveland. Now, he is a Black man who has traveled to Africa He has met up with a lot of great people around the world. He's gone to the Great Pyramids, Egypt. I mean, he's done a few things, and I can't wait for Aisya and I to interview him this Friday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So make sure you mark your calendars. For everyone who's listening, we want to thank you for your time on this Sunday evening. Miranda, thank you so much for being my fill-in co-host and sharing some of your truth with the audience today. And guys, if you want to promote your business, if you want to do a segment on the Sistas Talk podcast, I'm opening up my schedule for that. Just go to sisterscwt@gmail.com. You can look right below this podcast right now and see my email address. Reach out to me. Also, for those who don't know, my husband and I just started up our relationship coaching 101 business. We are accepting new clients. We're getting flooded right now, but we have a smaller window open for the rest of this month. After that, we're gonna have to close it off for a little bit. So make sure you email me at that same email address, and we'll get you started on our program. And yeah, just all great things happening for everybody. Ladies, you guys killed this podcast. And as always, I want to thank our listeners. You guys have a blessed day. And thanks for tuning into the Sistas Talk podcast. See you Friday. Bye, guys.